being a real man and what it means to assert yourself. So, what does that mean? That means in any situation, someone has to step up. So, if there is a plane crash and you got five survivors, as a dude, if I'm one of those survivors, I'm going to think, oh, naturally, I should step up. But if a female steps up and says, look, I have management experience, I also have medical experience, I'm obviously going to defer to her because that makes sense. We're not going to X you out just because of your sex or your gender. We're going to look at your expertise and your ability to lead. That's what we keep saying. The problem we're addressing is that a lot of men don't want to step up. They're automatically deferring to the woman. And some women don't like that. If they like it, fine, run with it. But for those who want to step up and have those leadership skills, let's talk about that. But first, let's identify what you shouldn't do. There's a word going around: toxic masculinity. Mr. GP, what is toxic masculinity?
First of all, that's two words. And toxic masculinity refers to harmful, culturally enforced expectations of men and boys, often characterized by dominance, aggression, emotional suppression, and a devaluation of femininity.
I did a deep dive into this word toxic. And not that it's a word, it's more of a label, because that's the thing we do nowadays. If we could label things, then we're okay with it. Oh, I was able to attach a label to this perspective you're posing, you're toxic. Now I can X you out rather than have the tough discussions. This is what we want to do. We want to have those tough discussions. So, what is toxic? First, we have to acknowledge that when it comes to domestic violence, 98% of the victims in a domestic violence situation are women. So that means 98% of the abusers are men. We have to acknowledge that. In no way do we condone this. And honestly, if you're abusing a woman mentally or physically, you got some soul searching to do and some real changes to do. Because I remember going for a job and I had to get my background check. And at this time, before we had all these computers, I know I'm an old head, I had to go to a courthouse and get actually a paper that says I don't have any felonies or misdemeanors. And the one thing I remember when I was down there with the amount of brothers who were running their background check and finding out that the domestic violence situation they went through stuck on their record and they had no idea. And I was glad I was not one of those people. So that's definitely toxic. But if that's toxic for a man, what's toxic for a woman? Because we never address that. So you have women who will go after certain guys just for money. And then when they get that money, they're not applying that money to the child, they're applying it to themselves, their nightlife, or maybe another man. I find that toxic. Then let's not even talk about how many men have been fooled by women into thinking that a child that's not theirs is theirs. This has happened time and time again. So how many men raised the kids that weren't theirs is crazy. But right now, in most states, if you take responsibility for a child that's not yours, and then you decide to break up or something happens, you break up with the mother later on, you could still end up paying child support, even if we know or the court knows that legally this is not your child. They'll say you're recognized as the father. I think that's toxic. And for a woman to accept money from a guy who's not the actual father, and again, there are always different circumstances, I think that there's a lot of discussion to be had on that. But let's get back to another example.
Hold on. So let me cut you off for a quick second there.
Go ahead. I was flowing, getting the people knowing, but go
I
ahead.
mean, you was flowing, but I'm trying to follow the flow. So are we doing toxic masculinity or are we doing toxic femininity?
So we're doing what is toxic.
Okay.
What is toxic? So to find that, so the big buzzword right now is toxic masculinity. So we got to address that first. But then we have to look at, is there something toxic going on with women?
To get into these toxic situations, I think there's a part of the relationship that men and women aren't recognizing or just flat out ignoring. There's going to be signs about these people. One thing I always tell my nieces as they come up, somebody's eventually A man's going to tell you who he is. He's going to show you who he is, and you have to believe him. So if you're dealing with a guy and he punches a wall when he's talking because he's so angry he's got to punch a wall, it's not going to be too long before that's your face. You got to follow those signs. This is how you stay out of these toxic situations. So I think a lot of times we want to deal with the term and what's toxic and all that. We need to, I think we need to learn how to avoid toxic people. And that's just my 2 cents on it.
No, avoiding
So
toxic people definitely is a big part. Go ahead, see.
yeah. So look, I've done a lot of kind of research in this, and one of the things we have to realize is people based on their upbringing, their life experience, and the home life they had while in their formative years, oftentimes will shape them into somebody who is drawn to certain types of relationships. This is deeper than just, oh, so and so was cute, so I ended up in a situation where they were abusive to me, demeaning to me, controlling, psychologically damaging, etc. But the reality is some people see that in somebody and that's what draws them to them because they are damaged
Preach.
themselves.
Preach, brother.
I'm just saying.
Right. So
What do
if
we do
you're
then?
addicted to the toxicity,
Hmm.
you can't well, you can blame the other person who's toxic, but then you have to look inside yourself. Minga, have you dealt with toxic masculinity?
I have, and I think that I also display toxic behaviors as well.
Oh, talk
It's
to me.
honest, real
I
honest.
appreciate the honesty.
hmm And I
Can,
do have
can
a
you
lot. I have to work on that. I have displayed toxic behavior as well
can
as
you expound? Do you mind expounding just to kind of
no
show us what you
problem.
think is
So
toxic?
I was not someone's piece in
Okay.
my previous marriage. I was not the piece.
Hmm.
I was oftentimes just like putting the person down, berating them, not making them feel like a man.
Mm.
Possibly even saying that he wasn't, because I didn't like certain behaviors. So I just degraded this person to the point where it just became a very traumatic experience for this individual. And I definitely created that.
Can I jump in though? That doesn't mean you were necessarily toxic. So
That's what I was just thinking.
if you if you're working and he's on the couch playing Call of Duty, you got to
What's
man
wrong
up,
with
bro.
Call of
What's
Duty,
going
bro?
on? Like
I,
it's certain things
I
that
I just want
you
to
didn't see it
object to
like
the
you were
use of
cutting up
Call of
his
Duty in
clothes.
this example, but please
Uh,
continue.
oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
because there's
I'm
there's
sorry.
gonna be a lot of brothers who say you can make money off of Call of Duty, even though it's not totally
Uh,
true. But go ahead.
right, and none of them are. But anyway, yeah. If that was the thing, like if he's not holding up his end and you called him out on that, that's not toxic because life is hard. Like you gotta both people gotta hold up their parts. Now, if you were cutting up clothes and throwing on bleach and stuff, all right, then we gotta, we if you were hanging in the bushes while he's going to work or something, then it's like, all right, we gotta re-examine this.
And they also said parts of being, thank you for making that point. So now I feel better. I wasn't toxic. So,
That was a quick elimination of that reality.
There you
I'm a
go.
little concerned.
Throw it out the window, Minga. Throw it out the window.
part of they say certain attributes of being toxic as far as men is their inability uh to acknowledge someone's emotions, women's emotions. So just being like standoffish, like if I am telling you or voicing my concerns and you just literally walk out of the door without addressing or finding a resolution, and to have these emotions just boiling up and I have to call a cousin or friend to talk about certain things that I should be discussing with this person, I believe to be it is toxic.
I definitely agree with you on that. But what I want to do instead of just pointing fingers is acknowledge why we need to get rid of labels. So, for example, I always say if you're trying to have a conversation about having better relationships, if you're going to call a person one of the is, like you're a racist, or you're a
Mm.
sexist, the conversation is pretty much over. You've insulted the person to the point where now they have to take a pivot so they're not actually labeled this word by entertaining what this person may or may not be saying. So getting rid of labels are important so you can have an honest conversation. And generally, I don't respect people just throwing labels at you because you're not putting thought into what you're saying. You're just repeating what you heard on social media or TV. So what it really comes down to, when you have people who are going back and forth, there's some mental health issues going on. Someone might have a dose of depression. Someone might have problems with their confidence, and maybe the man or the woman needs to support that, and they're not, and that's causing further issues. But just throwing out labels, that's not going to solve anything. But one of the things I want to say while reading about toxic masculinity, one of the examples they gave of toxic masculinity is working out and showing strength. And as you guys know, I'm a workout dude. I like going to the gym. I'm definitely a gym. I don't like using the word rat. I would say I'm a pro gym guy. So the whole thing with that now is that if you're going to the gym, staying in shape and feeling good about your body, I think that's positive. If you're going to the gym and throwing people in headlocks when you come out and punching people in the face, obviously, that is not a positive display of strength. And by the way, you have women who are displaying strength, flexibility, as well as a great physique in the gym. I don't know if some of you have been there, and I don't consider that toxic. Usually that gives people encouragement to want to do better. So some of the examples I found of toxic masculinity, and we're excluding any example that includes obvious, physical or mental abuse. Some of the examples were extreme.
I want to add one thing to this, and I think um, it could be a big part of this. And I think Professor G did touch on this. A lot more people, or a lot of people, need to see mental health experts, just for because because life can really beat you down. You can get a real beat down in life.
Yeah.
And it's one thing when you start dating somebody and everything's going well, but then recessions hit, jobs have layoffs, things aren't going so well. The money that was just there for partying and going out to dinner is not there, and things are tight. And your partner's like, "Hey, we can't do A anymore. Why can't we do A? What do you do?" There's a lot that goes into life. So sometimes people fall into depressions. They don't even know it.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a lot more put into our mental health, so we stay healthy, and we stay healthy for our partners, and for what we're going to show our kids.
Right. And this is again why I say be careful with the labels, because are you trying to label a person, and after you label them, what do? Do you just throw them away after that? Again, if it's an abusive situation and you feel your life is in danger, definitely you should get away. But if it's a person like me, again, I'm glad my wife didn't throw me away, because there was a time I had a bad attitude, and she could have made a case that, hey, I don't want to deal with this. You're toxic. However, we worked through it. We had many, many long conversations. We shed tears. We hugged. And we came to understandings about what's the proper way to communicate. And that's what we're going to talk about next time we get here. How men and women communicate differently. And I'm going to decode how to speak to a woman. You just stay tuned.
Wow. That's a bold
We might have to
statement.
put that one behind a paywall, because that's some bold. I don't think we want to just give that for free.
That's what we're doing.